Hey, Bob. Good afternoon.
Oh, hey, Tommy, welcome. And
Thank
I'd
you.
like to welcome everybody to our podcast, On the Real Side. The music you're hearing is a tune by Walter Davis Jr. called On the Real Side. And I get a good chance to talk to friends and people I admire weekly. And I don't admire them weekly, but I talk to them every week. Let me say that. And a person I strongly admire, a very good friend of mine for a long time, is here with us today. And I have, as we started to say, hey, Tommy, how you doing?
Oh, I'm well, Bob. Thanks, and thanks for having me. The feeling is mutual. I strongly admire you as well.
Thanks, man.
I feel
Well,
like I
we've
should
known
be
each other
doing you.
for a while, yes. And you may not know Tommy, but, Tommy is actually quite ubiquitous around the city. Plays with several bands that you can hear, Santi Debriano's orchestra, he calls it, and also Santi's quartet. And Tommy has his own quartet and plays in groups with Nat Adderley Jr. and well, he was with Mickey Bass. Unfortunately, Mickey passed last year, but Tom did quite a bit of work with him. And you're one of those cats that, I guess some people are chosen by the record companies and by the agents and this kind of thing to get a lot of publicity and push their careers, to a certain extent. And nothing against those people, and those people are very lucky. But Tommy has managed to actually make a living playing music uh, and playing mostly jazz since we've met, which was about 17, 18. Oh, I guess that was like 2003 or something like that.
About 20 years ago.
Yes, wow, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, we actually met through Bob Cranshaw, the great bassist Bob Cranshaw. I believe it was during uh, the jazz, what was it, the Jazz Educators Convention, which they used to have, NAJE, National Association of Jazz Educators. And they, which was, now they have a different organization that meets elsewhere. They used to meet mostly in New York. So we met that year. Um, as I recall, you were with your dad, and he brought you, there was a jam session, was it Smith's Bar or someplace around Midtown that Cranshaw was playing with a clarinetist.
Yes.
Remember
Uh,
the name of that guy?
David. Uh, geez, I'm trying to remember the last name. Yeah, wonderful clarinet player. I'll remember it in a moment.
Yeah, he was a really good clarinetist. I mean, I'm sorry, David, if you're watching this, sorry we don't remember your name, but we remember you. And, he played some nice clarinet. And this session was a rather open session, and we came by and played. Danny Mixon, the pianist, came and dropped by, and the late John Coliani stepped in for a minute. And it was really, Bob was like kind of running the session, and that's where I met Tommy. And you remember we just played and we just started a conversation. And what do you remember?
Yeah, I remember I asked if you taught lessons, and you said, "Oh, well, let's go hang and get some pizza." So we went to La Familia in Midtown. We had some pizza slices that night. But it's funny how I actually ended up at that jam session. I ran into Bob Cranshaw on the street on 48th Street in front of the Union, and he saw that I had my horn, and he said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, wow, you're Bob Cranshaw," and he said, "Yeah, come up to my office and talk to me." So I went up to his office, and he said, "Oh, come join this jam session." So that's how I ended up uh, being there, which is kind of.
And you hadn't known him before.
No, I had seen him when I was 14 years old playing with Sonny Rollins' band, but I'd met him and got an autograph then, but I didn't know him personally at that time.
Right. Well, Tommy, actually, one of the things that Tommy has done that I admire and was struck right away when I met him, Tommy is a type of historian. I mean, you know, in the same way I guess I was, in the sense, always kind of trying to find the truth through the cats, the older guy, you know, the older cats, the guys of the past, and getting to know those people and understand that whole attitude that they brought with them, which is an attitude that's not really present too much in the world anymore as these people leave the planet. And so Tommy had had some experiences. Tommy knew people and actively sought out people like, you know, Hank Jones, Eddie Burt, Joe Wilder, those kind of people who also were not your household names, but were great, amazing musicians. And one of the people that Tommy had known, that we're going to cover a few of these people because Tommy had some wonderful memories of these people. I was very impressed by the fact that Tommy had gotten to know Lucky Thompson, you know, the great Lucky Thompson, who was more or less, or more than less, I would say a recluse, living in Seattle, Washington, seeing very few people, and he had a reputation as having been a rather bitter and angry type of person. That's what you'd hear, at least among the grapevine of the musicians and stuff. And Tommy painted a whole different picture of getting to know Lucky. And you know, well, first of all, how did you end up in? How old were you? And you were living in Seattle. What brought you to Seattle, and what were the circumstances of your meeting Lucky Thompson?
Well, I was actually a member of the Brubeck Institute Quintet, and I was doing an educational tour with my teachers, Bobby Watson, alto saxophonist and composer, and Christian McBride. And so we flew from California to play at the EMP building in Seattle. And then I vaguely remember teaching a class with Jamie Abersol there as well. But that was my reason for being there.
You taught, you were one of the teachers of that class?
Yeah, I was just like a teaching assistant, so
Uh-huh.
I wasn't a main teacher, but just like a, let me say, assistant to Mr. Abersol.
Well, in this case, like I still want to know about Lucky, but let's back up for a second. You know, we'll
Sure.
kind of go a little backwards to your childhood, but we won't start there. This Dave Brubeck Institute, it was called.
Yes.
This was uh, kind of an organization that gave out kind of scholarships to people.
Yes, it was a.
What was that, and how did you get involved with it? How old were you, and how did that happen? How did that come about?
Well, I was 18 years old, and I was a student at the North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem, and uh, getting a concentration in classical saxophone, even though my passion has always been jazz. Um, but my teacher from when I lived in Colorado, he heard of this opportunity to audition for this new program called Dave Brubeck Institute, which was Dave's alma mater in the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. And this program only accepted 5 students throughout the nation. And so I had to go fly out to California and audition for Christian McBride at Yoshi's. And somehow he ended up choosing me to go out there and be a part of the program, which was a 1 to 4 year program. But I only decided to stay for 1 year.
5 students in the whole country were accepted.
Yes.
I mean, not on every instrument, 5 in general.
Uh,
And that was it.
Only 5, yeah. And yeah, on each instrument, piano, trumpet, saxophone, drums, and bass.
Oh, so there were 5 people on each instrument accepted.
No, yeah, it was only a quintet. Was the whole program of
Oh, that was
students?
the whole program was this quintet.
Yes.
Wow. Any
And
of
you,
the other cats that were accepted? Would there be anybody that we might know now?
oh yeah, my roommate in college was Fabian Almazan, who was a wonderful jazz pianist who works with Terrence Blanchard now and has his own band. He regularly plays at the Village Vanguard. And Joe Sanders was also part of the program. He's now working with Joshua Redmond.
Joe
And
the bass player.
Yeah, Joe Sanders, yes, the bass player.
Yeah, he
Drum,
played a gig with Michael Carvin tonight. He's great.
yeah. And then Justin Brown was the drummer, and Justin's done very well. He was working with Herbie Hancock, I think, in Brazil. And Anthony Coleman is also a wonderful trumpet player. I think he's still living in California, but working with the top musicians out there, I'm sure.
And who were the other teachers besides Christian? Bobby Watson, you mentioned.
My theory teacher was a wonderful gentleman on piano named Mark Levine, who used to play piano for Joe Henderson and Woody Shaw.
Sure, and he wrote the definitive piano book too, right? A book about how to play jazz piano. I think it was very, they got around quite a bit. And,
Oh yes, could probably considered the definitive college textbook. And also I studied with a man named Mike Zilber, who's a wonderful saxophone player who's a student of Dave Liebman and Joe Allard. So I studied saxophone and composition with him at the jazz school in Berkeley. We would drive down and play and teach there on the weekends.
So that was the faculty, and you ended up in Seattle. Now you were doing this tour, and you went. Didn't you go to England and everything with this band? Did you? Is that where you played Ronnie Scott and all that stuff?
That was after I moved to New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But so this band toured around a little bit and traveled, and you ended. So you're playing a gig in Seattle.
Yes.
And now we're talking about the connection to Lucky Thompson.
Yes. So the man who was in charge of facilitating the Brubeck Institute and the students, his name is J.B. Dias, and he works with the Thelonious Monk Institute at the time. And he introduced me to this man named Phil Cody and his wife. And Phil was taking care of Lucky Thompson at the Washington Center in Seattle. So he asked me, would you like to go spend an afternoon with Lucky Thompson, maybe play for him? I said, of course, I'd love to. I mean, it's one of the heroes and icons of the music.
Now, was this an old folks' home, like the Washington Center? Was that a home of some kind for elderly people or for?
Yes. It was like an assisted living facility.
Uh-huh.
And so I ended up spending the whole afternoon and evening there with Lucky. Just I played for him, and he was telling me stories about his life and some of his philosophies and so forth.
What is he? What did you glean from him? In other words, how I mean, what kind of cat was he? I mean, I know he was a very complex personality.
He was very kind to me and very, very generous with his time, and he even offered me his tray of food it was like hospital food, but I didn't take it, but it was very kind of him. And he told me that I remember asking him questions about playing with Bird and Miles and Dizzy and Thelonious Monk, and he told me that they treated him like family, like they were his brothers, and he had nothing but love for them. And yeah, he was just a very special musician, as you know.
Yeah. So is that the only time you really hung out with him? I mean, did you go back to Seattle after that, or was that like?
No, that was the only time I hung out with him. But I called him after that, and unfortunately, he wasn't in a very communicative mood when I called him.
What happened? You're laughing. What happened?
He cursed me out and told me not to call him. He was suffering from some mental issues, so it's mental illness, dementia. So I think his personality kind of changed on me. But the evening that I spent with him was lovely.
Yeah, well, yeah, dementia, that's such a sad thing when that happens. I mean, now being the age that I am and having always been the youngest cat with in my life, I was always the baby, and a lot of my music, I was a little bit like you. The cats I hung out with were 10 to 20, 30 years older than I was. And so I've had a couple of experiences with some friends who, in fact, just yesterday, a friend of ours, I won't say who it was, but I had a nice talk with him in the afternoon, and we talked for a good half an hour and caught up with each other and everything. And then an hour and a half later, the phone rang, and it was him again, wanting to know how I've been.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like, man, we just talked to half an hour ago, but I'm still good. You know, I mean, it
yeah,
was, it was an hour ago. I didn't mention that, but you know, so it's one of those things you get used to as you get older too. Doesn't get any better, like any more pleasant, but it does happen.
sure.
Now, you know, you grew up in, you were born in North Carolina. Is that
No, I was born in Silver Spring, Maryland.
right? And your dad, who I know quite well, Mr. Miles Morimoto, he was not named after Miles Davis, right? Your grandfather wasn't a jazz, or was he?
Uh, I'm not sure. They say he might have been, but I really don't know.
You know, because I know he loves jazz, and you know he's and you know he's kind of peripatetic. He's been around. He's been in, I think he grew up in several places, from what I understood. He's frequently changed, done different work, and you know he's pretty imaginative. All the various things. Well, tell me a little bit about your folks. I know your mother is in medicine.
Yeah, she's in endocrinology. Uh, and my father, he's retired now, but they live in Virginia, Luray, Virginia. So he was working in computers and building computers and telecommunications.
Uh-huh. And and you have several brothers and sisters. How many? Four or five? Four.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of five. So I have
Oh,
two younger brothers and two younger sisters, but they're all grown up now and have uh are married and have families. And
and you are the only musician in the family, even though one of your brothers plays, right? Is that true? Or
yes, one of my younger brothers plays the bass, but not professionally. He's yeah, I'm the only one who's tried to pursue music professionally.
when do you remember your first interest in serious pursuit of music was? And what was the music you were hearing, and uh, what attracted you? You know, and how old were you and stuff like that.
Well, when I was 11 years old, I started playing the alto saxophone, and my father, he took me to hear uh, Lee Konitz at Barton's Jazz in Cherry Creek in Denver. So Lee was the first saxophonist who I ever heard. And then after that, I think maybe the next week I heard Lou Tabakian, and then soon after I heard Sonny Rollins, and I was hooked on jazz. And when I heard Sonny, I said, oh, that's what I want to try to do with my life. So I want to be like Sonny Rollins, even
We
as
all,
that sounds.
yeah. Well, I mean, all three of those guys are good, are something to aspire to. You know, I mean, and later on in life, you had quite a, you know, a deep relationship with Lee Konitz that we'll talk about in a minute. That you know, as I was very close to Lee all through, you know, well, since I was 17. But you know, the so you never did you start on piano at some point, or did you play any instruments before saxophone, or
No, I took a piano class when I was in high school, but I didn't do too well at it because I was too busy running around. I should have been more disciplined.
yeah, well, I had that same thing with piano. It was much more fun to go out and play ball than to sit at the piano. My dogs are saying goodbye to my daughters on her way out into the world, and the dogs love to say goodbye, so that's what they're doing. They say, "See you later, roof roof." And so that was your first. Now your dad, was he playing jazz records around the house and
Yes,
hearing that stuff?
yes, I remember when I started playing the saxophone, he used to play me LPs of Kind of Blue, John Coltrane's Giant Steps, Eric Dolphy's Far Cry, Dave Brubeck's Take Five, and maybe some others that I can't quite remember the titles right now.
So he encouraged that,
Yes.
and so you're 11 and you were in Denver, so you moved. You had your childhood, your early childhood. You were born in Silver Springs, then you moved down to North Carolina from there.
No, at the age of 7, I moved to Denville, California, which is a suburb of Sacramento. And then lived there for 2 years till I was 9. Then I moved to Denver from there, 9 to 15. And then from 15 to 18, I was in North Carolina.
Uh-huh. So you start playing alto at 11, and
Yes,
then you heard Sonny, you were still 11 or you were 12 or right around
14.
there? 14.
Yeah.
And that's when you started to practice seriously.
Uh, yes, well, that's when I decided that's what I wanted to do, be a musician. So, yes.
And your dad and mom were supportive of that from the beginning, or
Oh, yeah. I actually, I don't remember how this happened, but I think my dad encouraged me to put a band together. So I had my own quintet when I was 14, 15 years old, and we opened for Stanley Turrentine and the Yellow Jackets, and
really was this in Colorado?
yes, so I used to open for these acts at the main jazz club in Colorado, the Casino Cabaret. So
So you did your father get you an agent or something? I mean, how did that come about? I mean, I
no, he would just say, "Go talk to the owner and see if you can get a gig."
really
Yeah. So I've been doing this a long time.
you're still doing that?
Yeah,
When
I'm
did
still doing that.
you get an agent?
No, I didn't have an agent then. So,
I
uh,
had an agent for a while, but it was a secret agent.
oh,
No, no,
I see.
must have been a secret agent because I didn't get those gigs. Um,
Oh,
no, he told me he was my agent. He told me he was my agent. I don't know, he's always hanging around. But yeah, so you had that initiative then to do those things, and then okay, so then you got your scholarship to the Brubeck School, and there was traveling and knowing those cats and playing with these people who are now well known, and there was some involvement with Clint Eastwood at that time, right? There was some kind of connection that I remember you telling me a story.
uh,
Wait a minute, let me shut the dog up. Stevie, quiet.
yeah. Mr. Eastwood was the executive chairman of the Brubeck Institute, and he was also good friends with Dave Brubeck. So he, I guess, he sponsored the program, and we used to play at his Mission Ranch in Carmel, California, and also he came out to spend a week with us at Sun Valley in Idaho when we were recording an album at rock star Steve Miller's house.
So there's a record of this quintet from the Brubeck, or this was with Steve Miller. Who was the record with?
Yeah, it was just the Brubeck Quintet, and Steve Miller had recorded it, so it's just called Brubeck Quintet. He was trying to get us a record deal, but I don't think anything ever came of it. But it was very generous of him to do that.
But the record never came out, but it's kind of still exists in the can somewhere.
Yes,
And
I've got a copy home somewhere. I think it's my
and
dad.
it's with these guys who are kind of like prominent musicians now.
Yeah,
So it's probably, at some point it'll get out there.
yeah.
But, I mean, sometimes it takes a while. I got a record that I did with Walter Davis Jr. There wasn't originally a record. It was just a nice tape we made in a concert in Salerno, Italy in 1988. And finally, Corey Weeds of Cellar Jazz is going to put it out. I think it's coming out next month. But how long it took? 98, 200, 2008, 2018, and 6. Is that 98, 2008, 2018 would be 30 years. And 36 years it took.
Wow.
So there's always hope.
Well,
And now when we met too, we kind of got into a situation where we sort of lived together more or less. You had an apartment, and I had
yeah.
a place. I was living down in Tribeca with my friend Carla and her son Jason in down there, and they had that crazy dog, Lucky, who I called Tyson because it would bite. The people go, "Oh, what a cute little dog!"
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And I was living in East 18th Street and Church Avenue in Brooklyn, where I got mugged. So yeah, it was safer staying with you.
Yeah, so I said, you better, that's not a good neighborhood for you. You better come here. So we slept on like a couch and the floor, and it was kind of we just camped out really in Carter's
Yep.
living room. And you had this little Chihuahua that somebody had given you named Baby, and
Yeah, my ex-girlfriend had given it to me, and I couldn't take care of a dog in New York City, so I ended up giving that dog to my parents. They took care of baby.
but not till we had a Baby for a while. We had Baby for a few months, and Baby
Yeah,
was very close to me. Baby really, and I bonded quite strongly.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then yeah, it was funny. I met the mother of my two youngest daughters, Ani and Simona, who are now 17 and 10. But I remember when I met Polina, their mother, Baby really didn't like her. Baby used to, I carried Baby on my neck. Remember, she would just hang on to my neck, and I walked down the street with her wrapped around my neck. And she saw Polina.
Yeah,
That was funny. But
yeah.
but we were poor, man. Tommy, I had just come back to New York after I was in Portland, and then 911 happened, so I didn't want to go back to New York. So I spent a couple of years. I spent about 7, 8 months in Portland, and then I went to Toronto because my daughter Emily was in Toronto, and I felt I'd go there before trying to go back to New York because I wanted to make sure that we're still going to be in New York. It was a scary thing when all that went down. So I moved to Toronto for a while, and I had some students, mostly singers. I was, coaching singers and everything. And then the SARS epidemic hit in Toronto, and that eliminated my students because they were mostly in the service industry, and the money for me was their tips. And of course, there was no service industry because nobody could go anywhere because they were scared of this disease called SARS. And so then all of a sudden, I could barely. I was living in a room in Toronto, and I couldn't even hardly get my rent together. And then I got the idea to make this film that we tried to do. That's another story about that Bob Cranshaw and Hank Jones and I were going to make an alternative to the Ken Burns jazz, another kind of history that talked a little more about the cats that were alive that got neglected in the in the Ken Burns jazz. But anyway, so that's all a preface to. I came back to New York because I figured were I to starve to death, I'd probably rather starve in New York than in Canada.
I
So
remember you told me how to make a feast for under $5.
yeah, right.
Got it down to science.
Yeah, rice and beans, man. I mean, and
Spaghetti, the
spaghetti.
sauce.
That's right. That's right. Spaghetti, and just get a tomato, and and yeah, right. I can't. I don't hope. Fortunately, I don't think I remember how to do that anymore. But but we were down there, and we were there, and thanks to the generosity of a very nice man named Winston Kulak, I had some money to live on. He was very nice. He's my friend Sam's father, and Winston kind of helped me out when I first got to New York. And I had a couple of students, but it was, I came back and whatever I'd done in New York, I was completely forgotten and kind of had to start from the beginning all over again. But, we kind of got through this poverty together, and I think you and I bonded pretty strongly during that period. We even played in the park. I couldn't
Yeah,
believe it was actually trying to
busking.
busking. Man, I never did that in my whole life. I'd never done that, and it was like so like there was so little dignity in it. But I figured, well, we're playing our horn, and and we didn't do well at it either.
I
You
remember.
I mean, that was like, I don't know if we were too far out, but I thought we were just playing tunes and we were playing duets. But nobody really, I mean, well, we got enough for the McDonald's dollar specials.
Yeah,
That was
that's right.
really the way to live. They had that, and but it kind of worked out, and so we did have that experience of being, being real poor together, and then things got better for you too. And I was thinking that back to your relationships with some of the older musicians. As I was saying, the guys like Joe Wilder and Junior Mance and Charlie Persip and Mickey Bass and Eddie Burt and of these cats were. How did you kind of get into those circles, and what did you do?
Um, I from actually it seems like everything comes from that chance meeting with Bob Cranshaw. I from there I John Coliani had invited me to play with Les Paul at the Iridium, and I got to know a lot of musicians through that for 6 years, sitting in about every Monday with Les Paul. And then I one night at Smith's Bar, AnitaO'Day came in and she asked me to join her band on the spot and play at the Iridium. So I was like 21 and I was in the band with Earl May and Eddie Locke and Joe Wilder and Anita and John Coliani. So that kind of got me hanging with the older crowd. And those guys were very generous and all gentlemen, and they were great mentors, and they would bring me to their gigs and show me how to conduct myself, as a professional and as a man. So
yeah, those guys really knew about that stuff. They did, and Anita. Well, Anita was a trip, man. I knew Anita since I was a teenager too. When I used to sit at the Half Note in 1968, she was there on the weekends with Roy Eldridge, and it was so funny because they really didn't like each other, and they would insult each other with the language that would shock a sailor, man. Like Anita would come right back with Roy, you motherfucker, and then they'd be like two dogs, like kind of barking at each other and this and that, and then they get on the bandstand, Anita, hey, Lord. And it was like, let me off uptown. And it was just, the essence of what it was to be a professional, to be able to do something like that. And she let me sit in with her and everything. And one time when I was in California, I had a disagreement with Chet Baker. And so I left the band when I was in San Diego. And they went on to Los Angeles and then home. But we had driven together from New York to California, Chet and I, and a couple of other people in the car. And since I left the band and quit in San Diego, I had no way to get back, and I had spent all my money because I had a girlfriend in Belgium, and she was having some emotional problems. So I had spent my money long distance on the phone to her. Anyway, Anita was the next person to come into the club called the Catamaran in San Diego, where I was, and I sat in with her for the night. And at the end of the night, she gave me $75, which in 1970, what was it? 1970, 75 was a good taste. It was, still not terrible now, but it was better then. And she was really sweet to me and really nice. And, I always was grateful for her for that. The funniest thing I remember, though, with you and Anita, we got to tell this story.
oh sure.
I mean, the story. I mean, that,
Yeah.
yeah. So let us, you tell it better than I do.
Sure. Oh, well, it was after one of the engagements at the Iridium. I was in the backstage dressing room with Anita, and she said, "Oh, Tommy, I'd like to share my drink with you." And I said, "Well, what is it, Anita?" And she says, "Oh, it's vodka." So I said, "Okay, I'll have a couple of sips," in celebration of, working with AnitaO'Day and her wonderful band. So I took a few sips, and then she says, "Oh, I put all my medications in the drink," and suddenly the room started spinning, and I couldn't find myself, like my legs went rubbery on me, and I couldn't get home that night. I had to crawl across the street to the hotel and motel and get a room till the morning. And yeah, I decided I'll never have a drink from AnitaO'Day again.
Yeah, well, I felt bad because I left you there, but I didn't know that was happening to you. I know that suddenly you look kind of out of it, and like you played a little strange, but it sounded all right. And as I recall, um, Anita was scuffling that night, and I just had a moment where I said, and in fact, she'd asked me to play too, and I declined because I just felt like I had such good memories of playing with her that I didn't want to cloud it with that. And so I remember saying to myself, well, I mean, Tommy, you got it. It's too bad because it was so sad to hear her as
Yeah,
a shadow of herself,
it
and
was.
yeah. Plus, there were some other things going on that were less than ideal. But yeah, so I didn't realize that you were in that state when you told me the next day that had, that was what happened, because you seemed a little, out of it. But I just talked to you for a minute, and then you were on stage. Next thing I knew, you were like off to play with her, and then that was the end of that story. But now also we both got to know Hank Jones quite well, and there was a lot of beauty in getting to know Hank, and it was toward the last the last 5 6 years of his life that I got to know him, and and you had some experiences with Hank too, including how did now you didn't meet Hank through me, right? Did you, or you met him through?
No, I actually knew of Hank Jones actually through my meeting with Lucky Thompson because afternoon with Lucky, he said, "Oh, if you," I told him I was moving to New York to pursue being a jazz musician, and he said, "Oh, if you go to New York, find my friend Hank Jones and tell him, I send my love and regards." And that's so one of those nights I was playing at the Smiths Bar with Bob Cranshaw. Hank Jones was playing right around the corner from me at Birdland with George Mraz and Kevin Mahogany. So on the break, I just walked over there and introduced myself. I said, "Hi, Mr. Jones. I'm Tommy Morimoto. I was wondering if I could study with you, even if it was just one lesson." And he told me, "Well, you can, but the thing is I live all the way upstate, and you have to come visit me, and I have to pick you up in my car, and I'd be happy to, but you have to do that." I said, I'll drop everything I'm doing and do it tomorrow." He goes, "Okay, well, I'll see you at the end of the week." And I got on a bus,
He lives
and
up near Cooperstown for those.
yeah, I think he lived in Oneonta. Or,
Oneonta, but Oneonta is right near the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
right.
Um,
And
over.
he picked me up in his Buick, '87 Buick. But on the
That
bus
was
ride,
his car. Was that his car, an '87 Buick?
yeah, on the way up there, I was wearing some Versace glasses, and the bus driver tried to rob me of my sunglasses. That's another story.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up going up several times to just hang with Hank Jones and his wife Teddy at his home up there, and he would let me just listen to him practice for 4 to 4 hours, and then he would invite me to play with him for maybe 1 or 2 hours, and then he would continue on practicing. But it was amazing because I'd never seen anybody with so much discipline. Uh, I mean, he really put in the time every day, and
Yeah,
very
well,
very
Hank told me, I don't know. He said that he liked to. He said he gets up and he would have his breakfast in his bathrobe and everything, but then he would go and he would get dressed as if he was going to play a gig, and he said he would dress in a jacket or a suit or something, and go sit at his piano because was he dressed when he practiced? Uh,
uh yes, well, he wouldn't wear a suit, but he would wear like a dress shirt, and he would be dressed for company anyways at his home, and then he would go through uh hand into 60 virtuoso exercises and Bach conventions, and then he would practice chromaticism exercises for about 4 hours, and then he would
Chromaticism exercises. Do you remember what kind of exercises?
They're kind of like the exercises that you showed me with the half steps, just going up and throughout the whole instrument. I asked him what was the purpose of these exercises, and he told me that by the time he's done with his warm up, like his hands play by themselves. He doesn't have to think about anything. And he would go through about 30 standards, 30 to 40 standards that he was working with people on other engagements, and he would play them through the keys. And other than that, he would let me practice with him sometimes, which is kind of funny. He was very strict. Like he'd have me play melodies correctly, and if I made a mistake, he would say, "Go back to the top," and he would get bugged. If I made a mistake 2 or 3 times, he'd get pretty bugged. But he was very generous to show me this.
Hank and I, we used to talk almost every day for a while, and I had my little electric piano there, and we've done generally, we talk about everything, but then we get into some music and he was always sitting at his piano, and so I remember he'd show me some changes. I said, "What do you play here? There's a passing chord that you put in?" And and he'd specifically show me some kind of cycle thing he was working on, or I learned a lot just hanging with him, and I generally would try to keep up with him with my very bad piano technique, but I have a pedestrian piano technique. As I say, I could play cocktail piano in a bowling alley, but but I generally, if he said, "Oh, here's the changes I use here," and so I said, "Okay, so let me run this down. This is what you just showed me," and I'd play it back to him, and generally, and one day my fingers I just cacked. The thing just crashed and burned, and Hank goes, "What happened?" I said, "I had a funny moment, Hank. I realized I was sitting here trying to play the piano for Hank Jones." you know, it didn't really occur to me before, but now it hit me that I was doing that, and I felt very foolish. But he said, but he liked to do that. He said that the music deserves the respect of your dressing up for the piano. The piano you should be looking good if you're going to play it. He had this whole thing with that.
Yeah, he's a very formal guy. He used to actually bring me around to his recording sessions around the city. So I would meet him up in Midtown around like 5, 6 in the morning, and he would let me sit and watch him record with different various players.
Well, we went up one day for that Thad Jones tribute record. That we went up together to NOLA.
Oh, right, that's right.
And what was really funny about that afternoon? They had a buffet out for lunch, and there were all these musicians there who were considerably, well, some not so much younger than Hank, but some who was up there. There was was it Lou or
no, Harry Allen was the
Harry Allen was up there, right? And
clarinet player.
Eddie Daniels up there.
Yeah, I think so.
But these considerably, at least 20, 30 years younger or more than Hank. And there was a kind of a semi-quasi Chinese health food type of buffet, and everybody's eating the cottage cheese and the this and that and that. And I'll never forget Hank sitting in the corner with a big fat hero sandwich and a Coke. and the least healthy thing you could have for dinner, for lunch. And Hank was there. He had his own. He wasn't touching that. He said, "I don't want that buffet stuff. I want this," and he was such a funny cat, man. I loved him so much. He had this thing with. He had never smoked a cigarette or had a drink or tried any drugs in his life. He never even attempted that.
Nope.
So, I asked him. Well, I don't even think I had to ask him, but he answered. He said, "Because had I tried that," and he turned down going with Charlie Parker, largely because of that. Bird wanted him to go on the road with him, and he said he couldn't do it. And I said, "Really?" He just, because he also had the job at CBS that he was just starting to do too, which he did that for many years, studio type thing. But he said, had I begun to do that stuff, I would have been the worst of anybody. because he said, Bob, I know no middle. When I do something, I only know how to do something completely. And, and once I said to him that, I said, your brother Thad, I'm told, I didn't know Thad very well, was a hell of a pool player. He was, like a world-class, could have been like a world-class pool hustler and this and that. I said, do you have anything like a hobby or something? Hank was like, I have no hobbies. it's all about music. He said, I don't have time for hobbies.
He had invited me one afternoon to go meet him in his hotel at the Muse on 46th Street and 7th Avenue between 7th and 6th. And I thought he was going to give me some musical knowledge, maybe the keys to the kingdom. So I go to his hotel and I go up to his room and he proceeded to read to me from the Bible for about an hour or two, and then he showed me how to clean the bathroom with Lysol with dishwashing gloves, and he told me that it's important because you can't get sick on the road.
Well, he knew that. Remember what part of the Bible he read you?
I wish I did. But he was big on the Bible every day reading. Very, very religious, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, he was. And and the other thing that was funny about Hank, tipping
Tipping.
in restaurants.
Oh, tipping.
He didn't believe in it. He was
No, he was hated all over the city because he didn't believe in tipping, which was very strange.
Yeah, you'd
And
have to go back and tell Hank you forgot something and leave the waitress a tip. Oh shit, I think I left something in the waiting. I'll be right back. I'll catch up.
I was always worried they were gonna spit in our food because he didn't tip, but I never said anything about it. I was just grateful to be there.
Yeah, yeah, that's some funny stuff, boy. But and then you also toward the end of Lee's life, especially, had quite a close relationship with Lee Konitz, who you visited frequently, and this and that. And I had been very close to Lee, and I made my first real record with him. And as a matter of fact, the good news is I played you a little bit of that stuff that they found, the two alto thing that Lee and I did with no rhythm section from Harvard University.
That's amazing. I hope they put that out.
Yeah, and also thank you, and also from the Beaux-Arts Museum in Montreal. Plus, they found a set that we'd done before we did this quintet record. We had a set at Sweet Basil with Benny Aronov on piano and Mike Moore on bass and Jimmy Lovelace on drums and the two altos. And George Schuler, who's been, putting together the Lee Konitz archives. I think I might have told you this, but I didn't tell the world this. Lee was very attentive to his own music, and he recorded himself a lot. He had one of those little Sony TC Walkmans, and so he left over 1,500 cassette tapes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 1,500 or 2,500, something like that, but a lot. And among these, they found this one night at, one long set at Sweet Basil, and hopefully George is looking that there may be more. But it's possible maybe he went over them. But there's quite a lot of great music there, including a duet concert that Lee and Ornette Coleman did together. But the other thing with Lee, he was so I would say his attention to detail was tremendous. About 40 years ago, when Lee and I were playing together, I had given him a mouthpiece. I had this long-faced Meyer that Jacques Pelzer, the Belgian saxophone player, a friend of Chet's and mine, had given me. It was really nice, a nice mouthpiece. And very unusual, the long-faced Meyer. You didn't see much of that, many of them. But Lee was going through mouthpiece changes, and he was like playing different mouthpieces different nights, and he said he couldn't quite find what he wanted. And so I had a feeling that even though this was my second mouthpiece, I was playing a Meyer at the time that got stolen with my first saxophone. But anyway, I had this as my second mouthpiece, and I said, "Why don't you try this?" And he put on that Meyer, and it sounded beautiful. It was what he was looking for. So he wanted to buy it from me, and I said, "No, you know what? I mean, I'm just going to give it to you as a gift." So I gave it to him. I didn't expect to see it again. And there's a couple records he made, I believe, on those records with Charlie Hayden and Brad Meldow. I happen to really like his tone on that record. That was my mouthpiece that I gave him. That was the Meyer. And so, but then years, about 40 years after I lent it to him, he said, "By the way, I'm going to give you your mouthpiece back." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I took it into Van Doren, and it seems that they're going to base the whole mouthpiece on that mouthpiece. They're going to take their own concept of this mouthpiece." He said, and so then they gave me the one that they made, and so I don't need this one anymore. So I just thought I'd give it back to you. So he gave it back to me, and man, there wasn't a scratch on it.
Wow.
He had played it for like 30 years or something, pretty consistently. Not a mark. It was like incredible.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, I foolishly sold it. I think for $1,200 when I needed money later that year.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know it was foolish, but anyway. But anyway, getting back to your relationship with Lee, I know that what was a day with Konitz like? Give me an idea of like how you would visit Lee and what would happen. I know
Oh,
you told me this is pretty funny.
I I think I reconnected with him at the Iridium. He was playing there with Gary Peacock and Paul Modian and Marshall Solal. Oh, no, it wasn't Paul Modian. It was Matt
Oh,
Wilson.
play. Oh, I'm sorry, it was who? Matt Wilson.
Matt, yeah. So I said, "Oh, Mr. Konitz, could I take a lesson with you?" He said, "Sure. It'll be $75, and you have to take me to lunch, and then we're gonna walk through Central Park." And so I said, "Sure, that sounds great." So
Told
I
you
would,
all that.
yeah. So I showed up at his apartment on 86th Street. I think it was between Columbus and Amsterdam, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was 86th Street.
Yeah, and then we went out to this Jewish delicatessen that he went to right near his place, and he ordered.
Barney Greengrass.
Yes, that's the place.
Yeah, Barney Greengrass. It was a Jewish deli, a dairy deli, actually, as opposed to meats. Because a kosher deli, you have to separate. If it's truly kosher, you can't have serve meat and milk in the same deli.
Yes, and he would order his favorite lunch or whatever, and then we'd go walk through Central Park, and he would go make conversations with people who are on cell phones. Like he was part of their conversation because he detested cell phones, and he would do it anyway in his elevator on the street. It's pretty funny, pretty out there. And then the lesson part of the lesson with Mr. Taconis would be maybe singing solos to each other, playing some duets on the saxophone on All the Things You Are. I'll remember April. I actually brought quite a few friends up to his apartment. We'd play just different standards that he liked to play with, maybe a piano or guitar. Like I brought Tadetaka Uno up there, and Sam Kulak, and my friend Rio Sasaki on trumpet, Jill McCarran. I brought Nathan Bellet up there, and your friend, the guitar player, young guitarist.
Benno.
Benno, yes. Benno Marr. I brought Benno up there, and he played with Lee for an evening. So yeah, we used to get some feedback.
Yeah, Lee's comments. I mean, that's the funny. What were some of the ways that Lee would?
Oh, he was brutal. Lee was brutal. I I'm not gonna say what he said about some of the other players. maybe, but I mean, to me, like, I remember one time I played with you. We played a gig for your band at Smalls with Rufus Reed and I think it was Bob Albanese and Steve Williams and Lee showed up there and I offered to give Lee a ride back in the taxi and I didn't ask Lee what he thought of my playing, but he let me know with with, with no hesitation what he thought. Wasn't very nice, but it was honest. He was brutally honest. I'll just put
About
it
you
that
or
way.
about all of us?
About me.
Oh, yeah.
But later in our relationship, he warmed up to me and he told his family at his 92nd birthday that he thought I was a fine saxophone player. So that was enough for me.
Yeah, Lee once told me I did this free jazz record with Paul Bley and John Abercrombie.
Yeah.
And some of the tracks, the record's called The Night Bathers on this Just in Time Records. And I think the two tracks that really didn't work out very well were, I mean, though, Paul and I were very close friends, but somehow when we played together, it just didn't work. It was like playing with a 200-pound gorilla. I mean, Paul was just all over the place, playing free. There's no basis of where to go. So all of a sudden, I thought he's going one place and he's somewhere else, and he was smarter than I am. So like I really don't think I played very well. I think my duets with Abercrombie were pretty good on that, and Paul and John played some good duets, and we all did some interesting solos. But the ones where we played together really didn't make it, and I felt that too. So Konitz says to me one time, Lee says, "Oh, I heard that thing you did with Blay. Uh, I was listening to this one track you duet with you and Paul, and I didn't say anything. And he said he lets a little pregnant pause go by, and then he says very thoughtfully, "Worst thing I ever heard you play."
Ouch. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was kind of Lee was brutally honest. Like he didn't know pull up back any punches.
No, he didn't. That was some funny stuff, But that was and he listened to a lot of music. That was one thing you told me about with Lee. I mean, besides the play when you would hang with him.
Yeah, we would listen to a lot of music together on his LP player, and he would turn the lights off and listen to a LP maybe 3 or 4 times through. And every time after the LP, he'd say, "Oh, what do you think of my solo on this? What do you think of that? What do you think of my solo on this?" I said, "Well, you sound amazing on everything." What can I say? I mean, he's a master. He loved to listen to himself, and he loved to listen to Sinatra and to sing along with Sinatra records, like scat sing. So
Yeah, he didn't sing very many lyrics, so he knew the lyrics. And sorry, I got a little something here. Um, he knew the lyrics to many songs. Though, he once told me he didn't feel that the lyrics were as important, which surprised me about him. As as Lester had said they were. He said, he feels that they were part of it, and he liked to hear songs because he liked the idea of songs. But he said they didn't have that deep an effect on him, which surprised me about him. But we used to sing over the phone. He liked to scat sing, so we would trade fours and eights. We'd just take a tune and Lee would go, "Stella by Starlight," beat up. And we trade, and that was a lot of fun with him. It was like, he enjoyed doing that. And, there were a couple of tracks that came out. Sorry. A couple of tracks came out with him actually singing as a youth, where he actually sang in bands and stuff. And there's a version of Embraceable You and a version of I'll Remember April. And he's quite a nice vocalist. He sounds good.
yeah, very very melodic for sure.
Yeah, and really, phrase, very good phrasing. Had nice phrasing with the lyrics, and probably could have done that.
I had a,
Incorporated that.
I had a funny Lee story to tell you. Well, at the time Benno came over, I didn't have my horn with me, and they were jamming. And I said, "Oh, Lee, could I play your tenor?" Because he's got a tenor in the closet. He goes, "Yeah, just just get my tenor out the closet. And I looked in the closet. There's no tenor there, but I found a handgun and ammunition.
Really?
Yeah, it was like Charles Bronson.
Well, he
Yeah,
was probably prepared if somebody came in to break
yeah,
his bad man. He was going to be ready for him.
that's right.
You know, that's yeah, that was one beautiful funny cat. Lee was, boy, and
You know, when we did a session at your apartment, I think Marcos was telling me he's got a tape of it somewhere with you and Lee when we played at your place.
yeah, you know, I got a tape of it too. But the thing was, Lee wanted to sing a lot of the time. A couple of times he played, and those really sound good. I don't like the way I play on them, but you know, I was a little nervous, and I felt this might be the last time I saw him, and was the last time we played together. I think he
Yeah,
died about a month after that.
yeah.
But you know, he um, the thing is on my tape, you can't hear him sing. He just sounds in the faint distance. You can hear him kind of like, you know, but you can't really make out what he's. You know somebody's singing, but it sounds like humming. If Marco's got it, something I should ask him. Marco Varela, if if he got if he got a better recorded version of that, because Lee was too far away from my. I was just recording on my voice memos.
Oh, I see.
And that was but he played a really. There's a couple of very nice things that he actually played on that was very good. So it'd be worth. I'll ask about that.
I know he loved you. Every time I mention your name, he would light up. It's like, oh, Bob, move. We got to get in touch and call him. You know. Oh,
Yeah, well, you know, we were you know, very close. That was you know, and then I moved to Canada for a few years and kind of lost touch with people, and Lee went through his Scientology period. You know, we're you know, but true friends, you know, they find each other again. That's what I found through life. You know, you have a real true friend. You might not even talk to them maybe for 4 or 5 years, or sometimes, but then it's like you saw them the day before. You know, when you see each other again. So let's talk about these days. You know what you're up to. I know you had a nice relationship. Mickey Bass was somebody who was kind of, to me, he was one of those guys that was always on the scene. You know, since I was a teenager, he was at jam sessions and with people. I remember him hanging around with Sonny Red in the '60s. In the you know when I didn't even know Sonny Red played alto. At that, I thought he was like an okay tenor player because he didn't really feel comfortable to me on tenor. You know, I mean, he didn't. But Mickey
sure.
was always was with him, and they were good friends. And I met him, and he was a sweet guy. And years later, after Sonny Red was not here anymore, I heard him on alto, and I said, "Oh wow," you know. But I, you know, but Mickey was always part of the scene. And what was your, you know, your reflections on?
Oh, he was a great guy. I used to rehearse up at his apartment up on 150th and Frederick Douglass up in Harlem. That just about every week for a couple, maybe 3 or 4 years. And we had a sextet together with the great vibraphonist Steve Nelson and Mark Johnson on drums and Brent Burkhead on alto and James Zoller on trumpet, who actually I had known through you from when we did your band with Victor Lewis.
Right. And Esperanza was on that band too.
Yeah, right.
And
So
yeah,
yeah, we did a lot of rehearsing. And he got a lot of grants from the Chamber of Music of America, so we did concerts here and there around the New York area, at Flushing Town Hall, Faison Firehouse, maybe a couple other places.
wow.
But it was great to be around somebody who was uh, such a heavy part of the jazz scene back in the day. Mickey had worked with Bud Powell and Sonny Rollins and and he used to be roommates with Philly Joe Jones in Philadelphia. He was in Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers with Woody Shaw and Carter Jefferson, and they had a lot of musical knowledge. And he used to go over to Monk's house, and Monk would teach him tunes on his piano, and just a lot of interesting stories.
Yeah, he was a great raconteur. He had a lot of stories. And then now another guy that was a wonderful person. I really enjoyed his company and loved to play with him, and I thought was one of the nicest people. And you got to know him too. Was Junior Mance?
Oh yeah, he was a lovely guy. I met Junior Mance through Earl May. Earl took me to hang out with them when they were doing a duo gig at the Knickerbocker. And then somehow I had ended up on a gig with Junior Mance with at the National Arts Club with Lou Tabakian, Paquito de Rivera, Dave Glasser, and Joe Temperley. I forget who else was in the rhythm section. And Junior gave me his card and his CD, and he said, "Oh, come play with me anytime at the Cafe Lupe on 13th Street."
He did Sundays there, right?
Yeah, and I lived just 3 blocks away on 16th Street, so I used to go down and jam with him and Hide Tanaka, the bass player at Cafe Lupe. And Junior is a beautiful guy. Yeah, great player, very soulful. He's one of my heroes. I love that album he did with Johnny Griffin and Eddie Lockjaw Davis, "Looking a Monk," with Ben.
Yeah, that's a nice record, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dexter Gordon too.
yeah. I remember when I first came back to New York from that period of Canada. I was still, that broke period and this and that. But I was sitting one night at Birdland, and they used to have that after hours jam session with Victor Jones for a while, this kind of thing. And I think I had sat in on that, and then I sat down, and Junior bought me a drink, and Tommy Flanagan came and sat down with us, and I said, "I'm back home. Here
Wow,
I am in New York. I'm sitting here. I may be broke, but I'm sitting between Junior Mance and Tommy Flanagan having a taste, and this
wow,
is this is good. I'm happy to be back. It felt like that.
amazing. Yeah, that's
And
a
now Lou also, I'm gonna have Lou on a podcast at some point if he wants to do it, because I also met Lou when I was a teenager, and Lou always reminded me when I'd hang out at the half note at 16. He would be sitting in with Zoot. Sometimes we'd even sit in together with Zoot and people, but Lou was around a lot and hanging with Zoot and Al and Richie Kamuka and those people, Brew Moore, all of those cats. But I always felt like when you're in high school and you're like a freshman and the seniors, like I always felt like Lou was hanging out with a drummer named Alan Schwartzberg, and they would come in together, and they were both really good. And I was just kind of, I'd just been playing a short time, just was lucky to not be thrown out, but they were like, I always thought Lou was like one of the big kids, and I still have that vibe when I meet Lou. I still feel like I'm like one of the little kids at school, and he's the senior, and I'm the sophomore.
I always feel like a little kid around Lou myself. He has so much experience. He's a really beautiful guy, and his wife Toshiko and their daughter Monday, beautiful people.
Yeah, I mean he, also is a real walking history of the tenor.
Yeah.
Really, you know, I've heard him play some beautiful things, and so you used to go over and hang out with him, right?
Yeah. He actually came and played with my jazz quintet when I was in high school for a week, and that's how I kind of reconnected with him. And he's really been a mentor and looked out for me ever since I've been in New York, and just a great friend. I've been over to his house many times for meals with Toshiko, Akiyoshi, and their friends, and um, she even hired me to be like her band boy to carry around their arrangements for Lincoln Center a few times.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, uh, yeah, just very wonderful people, Lou and Toshiko.
And most recently, you play a lot up in Harlem. I mean, every time I talk to you, you're doing some kind of gig up there, and you're working a lot with my friend Santi Debriano, who's a wonderful bass player, and he does a lot. Is he does most of the arranging for his group too, or a lot of it, or?
Yeah, he does pretty much all the arranging. Just not all of it, but pretty much all of it. I'd say 95% composing for his group. Yeah, and Santi is incredible. He inspires me to practice. He's a hell of a musician.
Yeah, Sante is, and and another person who one could write a book about is Alvin Queen.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love Alvin Queen. He's one great musician, great friend too. I'm very fortunate to know him.
Yeah, I mean, so what do you think of? Well, what's your general opinion about the scene, and how has it? In other words, how are you inspired by it, and how are you disappointed by it? And can you give me a little idea of what your philosophy of things is at this point in your life?
Um,
Um,
I th- well, the scene is kind of I don't really know if there is a scene. I mean there is a scene. I mean people hang out at certain clubs and things like that, but I kind of find that if you are trying to play music in New York, maybe you find your tribe or they find you, as you play and you meet people. Uh, I mean, yeah, you run into a lot of people and same people, and they dig your attitude. You probably end up working with them at some point and keep keep good relations. Uh,
so there's
it's
less places to apprentice. I mean, I think because there's less older cats, there's less working bands. And that must be, difficult too. There's less people to become a sideman with or to.
yeah, I feel like it's very competitive, but I don't believe in competition in music like say Battle of the Bands, but to get in these bands where you have a opportunity to be an apprentice is very competitive. Like I feel like the opportunities are out there, but in order for you to have that opportunity, you're gonna have to knock somebody out of that spot by being competent enough to fill that role if that's what you want. So that's yeah, it's very competitive, as you know.
Yeah, I kind of managed to stay out of the fray as much as I could. Well, you know, yeah, but as far as working, there's only a certain amount of slots and a certain amount of slots that pay better than that pay three figures.
I always kind of believe like if you work hard and be humble, people will want to help you, and you'll work and you'll stay working. But if if people have negative attitudes, those are the ones you usually don't see working. And you see them complaining. Now, I mean, I remember one of the things that Chris McBride taught me when I was in that program out in California. He said, it was stuck in my mind. He said, if you have time to complain, you have time to practice. So, uh, that's kind of how I see it. It's about you got to go out and show people what you can do and deliver. And when you do have a gig, you have to do what the leader wants you to do and do a good job and make them want to hire you again. And just the things about um, not stepping on people's toes and doing things that are tacky, like trying to get a gig when somebody hires you, like at the same venue as the leader. I mean, things like that. I see a lot of people step on their own feet that way. But there's many young talented people though. Playing music. It's not maybe the music that I prefer to listen to. I mean, uh, I guess when I was a teenager, my parents, like I said, they would bring me to these concerts of great jazz musicians, and they say go talk to these people, and so I would end up hanging out with like Cedar Walton, Billy Higgins, and spending time with them and listening to them play. And I don't really hear people playing jazz on that level today, unfortunately. Uh, but I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. If
Yeah,
that
well, I think the thing is that there's not so many like week-long gigs in clubs
Yeah, it's a different time.
where where if you know people at the clubs, you don't have to pay the cover every night because they know you and they say, "Oh, come on in, sit at the bar or whatever," and then you hang with the cats, maybe get a chance to sit in, go out to breakfast afterwards, and get to know. There's not the world doesn't foster that kind of camaraderie uh, these days as much as it did. So I always think the young cats now are at like a disadvantage, just not having that in their lives. That.
Yeah, it seems rather unfortunate. I see there's a lot of people doing things though, so maybe there are things going on that I'm just unaware about, but and I don't get out enough to hang out. But you
Yeah,
know,
well, I feel that too. Like I hope that there's more things going on, but because of my emphysema, I don't get out the way I used to, or in fact, I hardly get out at all. But um, so I know there's a few places around town that are happening, and that
I'm not
well,
trying to say that there aren't people doing things because there are people doing amazing things, but I guess I'm saying I'm not aware of it. I need to get out more probably, because there are a lot of people doing a lot of amazing things, apparently, you know, selling a lot of products and shaking hands, making friends.
yeah,
So,
right. But you're working, and anyway, we continue on, and you know, I hear you improving all the time,
well,
and
thanks, bro.
we still hang out. And Tommy is also an amazing cook,
Oh, thank
and
you.
and a terrific backgammon player, and we have a lot of fun doing that and relaxing together. But I guess that anything else that we've kind of covered quite a bit. I know you were also friends with Barry Harris and had that experience with you know and I think you've taken advantage of one thing with you've done is being here. Everything that's been available on the big plate that's New York. You've partaken from the cheese plate and the meat plate, the fish plate, and all of the the these assiettes, the plates that New York offers. I think of it like a big smorgasbord.
Oh,
And
thanks, bro. Well, one thing that I hope that people realize is I hope people realize that, about you is that you're the master, stone cold master musician, and they should get as much knowledge and experiences as they can while you're here. Because, I mean, life is about people who are alive, and you're here, you know?
so far, yeah, thanks, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we want to thank Tommy Morimoto for sharing his knowledge and experience and the wisdom that he's gleaned through these years with us today. It's been fun, and want to thank Jessy Kaiser, our producer, for helping put this together and making this all work. And we'd like to thank you for tuning in today, watching us, and we'd appreciate it if you'd give us a like and tell your friends about it, and we it helps us more than to become a what you say to subscribe, and so all of that, it doesn't cost you anything. Don't cost no money. No, it doesn't cost you any money. And like I said, it does help us out. And we can continue to bring you these wonderful people that bring you every week. Once again, thanks a million, Tommy.
Well, thanks for having me, Bob,
Great.
and have a good evening.
Yeah, Tommy Morimoto. So, hopefully you'll catch him. Just go uptown, take the #1 train, 125th Street, and you'll find him at one of those places. and or look for Santi Debriano's band, and Nat Adderley Jr. Quintet, and other places that you may. Mel Davis, is that the other cat?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Nathan. Oh, the son of Nathan Lucas, right?
Oh, yeah, Nate Lucas.
Nate Lucas, the organ player.
Yeah.
You know, Tommy is all around the town. All right, thank you very much. God bless you all, and we'll see you next week with another illustrious guest.
Take
Okay.
care.
Bye bye. Thanks again, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Jesse, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.